Welcome back. Futures indicating a gain at the start of trading this morning. Take a look. We've got a big week of retail this week, earnings as well as sales numbers coming out. Dow Industrial's up 112, about 1/3% this morning. The Nasdaq up 31 and the S&P higher by 15 right now. We've got Home Depot, Target, TJX, and Walmart all reporting earnings this week. That will set the tone for retail and certainly give us a window into the macro story as well. We're also looking ahead to the April retail sales number. That's out tomorrow morning. Economists are expecting an increase in sales of 0.7%. That would be month over month and up 0.4 when you strip out auto sales. Joining me right now is Andersen Capital Management's Chief Investment Officer, Peter Andersen. Peter, great to see you. Thanks so much for being here. What do you think will be more important to markets this week? The retail data, whether it's earnings or the retail sales coming out, or this debt negotiation meeting with which is happening tomorrow between Kevin McCarthy and the president and other congressional leaders?
Well, first, the easy answer, Maria. I think the debt negotiation will go fine. We just have to look at history. There has been 20 of these negotiations in the past 20 years, and we all know that they have turned out, dare I say, okay, in the sense that there was closure. So I don't think this one is going to be any different from the past 20 years of exercising this. Now, the more difficult question is, what is more important about retail? Well, one of the things I was thinking about is, even though the CPI has been decreasing, it's still on an upward slope. So it's almost as if retailers are climbing a hill, but we're telling them, hey, the hill is getting less steep, but it's still a hill. So at some point, I do worry that if the CPI does still have percentage increases, but they're decreasing, that retailers just might get fatigued and say, I'm throwing in the towel and I can only afford what I need, not what I want. So I think that's the more important sign of things. But I also think the retail stocks out there, the companies that are reporting, will give us some additional color on that as to whether or not the consumer is growing fatigued at all with all this increase in inflation.
Well, they have been tapping into their savings accounts to pay up for this high inflation, even though it's off of the highs of the year. I'm with Chris Murkowski this morning. Chris, jump in.
Listen, last week I got to take a look at Bank of America's credit card report, and we had been seeing some weakness on the middle to lower end of the spectrum, but we're now starting to see it, Peter, on the upper end of the spectrum. I'm just curious to see what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think that does reinforce, the question I have, which is how durable is the consumer in the face of declining CPI increases. And so I think we are starting to see some hints that some of us are saying enough is enough, and I just can't keep up with this. So even if retail sales do increase, I think they will not certainly match the increase in the CPI. So that's a concern. And I think what you're highlighting is some of the early indications that it is creeping up into the middle echelon of the retailer out there.
And then the question becomes the Federal Reserve. White House National Economic Council Director Lyle Brainard, formerly the number 2 at the Fed, she's calling on Congress to lift the debt ceiling to avoid the impending default. She spoke to CBS's Face the Nation, and Brainard expressed concerns. Watch this.
Their biggest concern is that Congress might fail to prevent default, and that would be catastrophic. Yeah. It would lead to higher borrowing costs for cars, for mortgages, for small businesses, even for the U.S. government. The most important thing is making sure that Congress fulfills its basic responsibility to avert default.
Well, Peter, what about the White House's basic responsibility? She's once again putting cover for Joe Biden as if it's all Congress's fault. The reason we got 40-year high inflation is the reckless spending, and the Inflation Reduction Act only added to that.
I know, and it's kind of like this, people are pointing fingers at each other. It's typical political circus, frankly. And when I hear these kinds of things, I say to myself, well, what is the end result? And it's unthinkable that we would ever have defaults on the U.S. Treasury. I know over 10 years ago, we didn't even come close, but the Treasury did get downgraded temporarily, and still people flocked to Treasuries because it was the highest quality. So seriously,
so Peter, real quick,
I don't mean
what
to.
do you want to do here? Would you be buying stocks here?
Maria, I am fully invested, but I'm invested in technology and healthcare. I think retailing, given the tone of our discussion, stay away from retailing for a while simply because it's too iffy. But technology, artificial intelligence, healthcare, those are things that are probably not going to be impacted by a more inflationary environment.
Okay, we will leave it there. Peter, good to see you. Thanks so much. Peter Andersen joining us this morning on the economic data and markets. We'll see you soon, Peter. Thank you.